Myths and stories have great power.
With great power must also come great responsibility.
Kirk replied, "But I can't let Spock die, can I, Bones? And he will, if we go to Altair. He's my friend, and I owe him my life a dozen times over. Isn't that worth a career?"
At last, a catalyst to speed up the fermentation of quick-growing spores which give off a gaseous byproduct similar to marsh
Flash
gas.
Gordon. Flash is taken to the Wizard's Ray Vaults for execution. Hidden Bowman will shoot him if he steps off the dais before the executioner emerges from the fiery ray fog.
"Oh, Barbie," said Ken, smiling. Barbie lifted her pretty nose in the air.
Having time for all you kids to gather around your radios and
The
listen.
police were baffled. It was obviously a case for the Shadow.
It's time to go back in time. Let's read what teenagers read from the popular culture of the last 150 years. It's time for Bubblegum Books.
Hello, thanks for coming by Bubblegum Books. I'm your host, Professor Bubblegum. I'm the head librarian, head archivist here in Echo Valley, and also the host of this program. And we've got some good stuff today to read. We're going to start with a chapter from The Man from U.N.C.L.E., the first book in that series. Then we'll explore the classic comic strip from 1910's Krazy Kat. And then a recorded storybook from Power Records about The Flash and Aquaman. Then a great story from the book The Case of the Marble Monster by I.G. Edmonds about the very wise Judge Uka. Then we'll read about the Quiz Kids and the Crazy Question Mystery. This is a Whitman book from the 1940s. And we'll end with a funny parody of Tarzan called Melvin in the second issue of Mad Magazine from the 1950s. That's the plan today. Let's get started.
Books of the ages, for all ages. It's Bubblegum Books.
This novel, this is a chapter book, is called The Man from U.N.C.L.E. It's the first of a series of Man from U.N.C.L.E. books based on that popular television series of the 1960s about spies. This is written by Michael Avallone. That's a name you see on tons of books from the 60s and 70s that are based on TV shows. He was quite a prolific novelist. This is the first volume published by Ace Books. The copyright year is 1965. Here's The Man from U.N.C.L.E. by Michael Avallone, the first chapter. And before the first chapter, we get this introduction. The U.N.C.L.E. Organization, United Network Command for Law and Enforcement. There is a row of buildings in New York City, a few blocks from the United Nations building. At the south end of the row is a 3-storied white stone, which appears fairly new in comparison to the brownstone buildings which made up the rest of the street. At the north end is a public garage. The brownstones are occupied by a few lower-income families living above the decrepit shops and businesses which rent the space on the street level. Del Floria's tailor shop occupies the street-level space in a brownstone near the middle of the block. The first and second floors of the white stone are taken up by an exclusive key club restaurant known as the Masked Club. On the third floor of the white stone is a sedate suite of offices, the entrance to which bears the engraved letters U.N.C.L.E., U.N.C.L.E. In this suite of offices, a rather ordinary group of people handle mail, meet and do business with visitors, and in general seem to be a normal organization engaged in some special charity project or a fund foundation operation. All these buildings are owned by the organization known as U.N.C.L.E. An organization chart for U.N.C.L.E. would read as follows: Section 1, Policy and Operations. Section 2, Operations and Enforcement. Section 3, Enforcement and Communications. Section 4, Communications and Security. Section 5, Security and Personnel. Napoleon Solo is the Chief Enforcement Agent for U.N.C.L.E. U.N.C.L.E. stands for United Network Command for Law and Enforcement. The Man from U.N.C.L.E. Volume 1 is called The Thousand Coffins Affair. Chapter 1. What happened to Stuart Froms? A corpse is always interesting. Rich man, poor man, beggar man, or king, who a man is and how he died is of far greater interest to mortal man than, say, the price of eggs in Istanbul. The corpse that comes into being for strange and exotic reasons, of course, is of paramount interest to the police and law enforcement agencies of the world, and while all of us are touched in some phantom way because another human being has been singled out by the Grim Reaper, the death of a special agent is naturally a vital matter to the body of men of which the corpse was a member. Stuart Froms was just such a man, just such a corpse. Froms died in Obertiesendorf, Germany, at approximately 5:15 German Central Time. He was 37, in excellent physical condition, a master field chemist for the organization known as Uncle. In Korea, he had won a Silver Star for staying 7 days on Heartbreak Ridge before a hand grenade put him out of action. In Obertiesendorf, there were no battles and no medals. There was only the long, unending, far-into-the-night research, which had brought him to the little town below the Bavarian Alps in the first place. On the day he was to die, he did 3 interesting things. At 5 o'clock that last afternoon, Stuart Froms was taking a bath in the wooden tub placed at the rear of the tiny laboratory he had set up in Frau Morgenstern's home. He was thoughtfully soaping his lean, angular body when he experienced the odd dizziness, which had become particularly chronic this past week. Froms waited no longer. He stepped naked from the tub, heedless of the soap and the chill of the drafty house. His bare feet sloshed across the wooden floor to the rear of the laboratory. There, a rickety wooden cage revealed a carrier pigeon nestling quietly. With quick, deliberate movements, Froms affixed a tiny banded scroll to the pigeon's right claw and set it free. He hardly waited to see it spring for the eastern sky, its wings fluttering rapidly. The second interesting thing that Stuart Froms did was to suddenly fall flat on his face in the center of the room, kicking over a low table on which he had set his clothes. He began to thrash about violently, his arms and legs twitching uncontrollably. Had anyone been present, he would have been amazed and terribly frightened to hear Stuart Froms, third in the 47 class of Cornell, begin to babble incoherently. The walls of the laboratory echoed with a string of moaning, gibbering sounds. The dampness of his naked body left small patches of moisture wherever his vibrating body touched. And then Stuart Froms did the third interesting thing before he died. Through the haze of pain and the complete seizure of his limbs and muscles, he reached blindly for the clothing scattered on the floor, his coat, trousers, and shirt, which had toppled from the low table. Stuart Froms was dying, slowly, terribly. Yet even as he rolled around on the floor like a frenzied mad dog, he began to dress. "Anything wrong, Napoleon? You look so worried. Is the cablegram bad news of some kind?" "No, but I would like you to excuse me for a minute or so, a business matter, pet." "Napoleon, look at me. Is that from another woman?" Napoleon Solo studied the long-legged brunette raising herself from a sleeping position on the gilded love seat. Denise Fairmount was worth more than one look. Her amber eyes looked beautiful, even in anger. Her silver lame gown shimmered as she rose, emphasizing the almost feline beauty of her body. Solo reflected briefly that the Hotel International's plush, brocaded Suite 411 was a completely appropriate setting for her. She was like some regal holdover from another century of French beauty, with just enough Americanizing to make her doubly interesting. He smiled at her. "If the cablegram were from another woman, I'd simply tear it up and put on another long, plain record." She lifted her chin, eyes sparkling. "Very well, then. Go read your important cablegram in privacy. I'll mix us another drink. We can get back to where we were soon enough, n'est-ce pas?" He winked. "Be back in a jiffy, beautiful." She nodded, watching him move toward the bedroom. The yellowish lights of the suite seemed to cast a halation around Napoleon Solo's form. Denise Fairmount sighed softly and shook her head, bewildered by the unexpected sexual appeal of this man. He had become far more than she had bargained for. Yesterday, on the Champs-Élysées, she had picked him up as he sauntered on the sunny thoroughfare. He had been easy to pick out of the crowd of tourists on a spree. The foolishness she had invented about lost directions had not deceived him, she knew. She had not intended that they should. And so they had flirted, dined at Maxim's that evening, and that was that. They had spent the night here in Suite 411. She shivered in memory. An interesting man, Solo, an extraordinary charmer. It was a pity that he would have to die. In the bedroom, Solo moved like a cat. His movements reflected tensile strength and an economy of effort that marked him for the trained athlete he was. His face, oddly boyish and pleasant, could become a cold mask of intellectual resolve when he was not smiling. He was not smiling now. Waverly's cablegram, held under a bed lamp, was upsetting. Napoleon Solo, Hotel International, Paris, France. Fromm's dead. In Obertiesendorf, Germany. Claim body immediately. Your uncle. Greatly upset. Remember to call. His mother, William de Prato, sends his best. Waverly. Stuart Fromm's was dead. Solo scowled, and the lines in his face hardened. William de Prato sends his best. It was quite unlikely Waverly to be so cryptic in a straight, harmless telegram. The death of Fromm's was a blow, of course, a very personal one, which Solo, who had known and liked the man, felt deeply. But the reference to Bill de Prato was something else again. Booby traps for booby traps, Solo said, tasting each word as he said it. That was Bill de Prato's best, the one GI line of advice to all combat rookies. Solo folded the cablegram and put it into his coat pocket. There was something damnably odd. Before he could further explore the meaning of Waverly's message, Denise Fairmount's scream could be heard shrilly from the living room, a high, thin scream of mortal terror. And that ends Chapter 1 of The Man from U.N.C.L.E., the first book in the series, and this book has the title, The Thousand Coffins Affair. Let's read from a popular Sunday comic strip from 1918. These very popular strips were about a crazy cat. Krazy and Ignatz. Krazy was spelled K-R-A-Z-Y and was a cat. A traditional sort of cat of the time, looked very much like Felix the cat, a black cat who was always up to no good. But as bad as Krazy Cat was, he was really being mistreated quite often by his friend and / enemy Ignatz the mouse. And the illustrator and writer for Krazy Cat was George Harriman, and he's really considered among the best who ever did a comic strip. We're going to read now from 1918. This particular Sunday strip is March 17th, 1918. This is one large drawing that really has 3, 6, 9, 12 different little frames or drawings here that tell the story. We start off with a drawing of Ignatz the mouse, who has a shovel, and he's planted a bean, and he's planted it in a little mound of dirt that looks kind of like a grave, and it has a little sign on it that says bean. And here's the narration. Ignatz mouse has planted a bean, trusting it will yield a crop of bountiful, unctuous, and oleaginous amplitude. Is that a word? Oleaginous? But nature, fickle mistress of our fortunes, neglects to pour in aqueous bounty, the rain so necessary to the growth and health of a child bean. We see the sun beating strongly, and no rain, of course, and a little voice comes from the mound of dirt, from the bean, I guess. I'm so thirsty. And Ignatz mouse looks very concerned, and then the bean is saying, water, water, and Ignatz stares at the awful sun, which, in a measure, perturbs the mind of Ignatz mouse, with a great fear for the future of his fretful legume. Water, or I perish, says the bean. Ignatz is either crying or sweating or both, and so comes a sad hour when this gentle bean soul, parched and withered by a too ardent sun, is about to pass out into a leguminous limbo, unmoistened, unbaptized, and muy seco, alas. Tell them not to grieve when I am gone, the poor little bean says, and our mouse friend is in great tears now. And what fateful shadow is this which falls upon this expiring binlet? The shadow of mortality, the shadow of life, or the shadow of woe? And then rain starts to fall out of the sunny sky. At last, a benison. I don't know what that means. B-E-N-I-S-O-N. Maybe it's a play on words involving the bean. They were a lot smarter back in 1918 than I am now. A throb, a thrill, a spasm of animation, the full flow of a tossing tide revivifies the drooping planticle, and cheats the reaper of a pure young soul. And now the bean has sprouted, and there's water everywhere. It's very muddy. It's almost flooded. And then we see up in the sky, I guess in a hot air balloon, hanging from it in the basket is Krazy Cat, who has a big sprinkler like gardeners use, and he also has an umbrella. And the water's coming out of this giant sprinkler, and the cat is saying, "At last, the ambition of my life is realized. I've been a Jupiter Pluvis to Ignatz' little bean child." Assume that's some Greek god reference. Jupiter Pluvis. "And I will now go down and give the result of my cloud effect the once over the top." And Krazy Cat jumps out of the balloon using his umbrella as a parachute, and he lands right on top of the mouse, who has a question mark. And the mouse does what Ignatz the mouse always does in these strips, is he throws a brick or rock right at Krazy Cat's head. And he does that, and we see the sound zip, and as the rock flies through the air, and then it hits his head, pow! And Krazy Cat says, "His gratitude is magnificent, little pink eye, and my dish of joy is full." And a little worm's watching. The worm says, "Ah." Epilogue. Here lies the bones of a Stringa bean. Her life was short, but very serene. She suffered much ill, though never infirm. She made a great feed for Caspar Cutworm. I'm glad you stopped by, Bubblegum Books. I appreciate it. I'm your host, Professor Bubblegum. I'm the chief librarian and archivist for the Bubblegum Books collection. The collection here is, of course, the largest in the world. We have every young adult book published, including comic books, pulp magazines, dime novels, regular chapter books. We also have recordings. This is a storybook record I'm going to play now for us. Looks like it was produced in 1975 by Power Records, a division of Peter Pan Industries. And if you're going to work for a company, who wouldn't want to work for Peter Pan Industries? The boss lives forever, never grows up, and they make pretty good peanut butter. This record is called The Flash and Aquaman, The Three Faces of Mr. Big, and The Defeat of the Dehydrator. Now, if you're Aquaman and you live in the ocean, a dehydrator would be quite a problem. These are both the DC superheroes, and it looks like Power Records made a bunch of storybook records about superheroes and Planet of the Apes and Star Trek, both the DC and Marvel heroes. There's some Spider-Man records here, and there's also stories featuring monsters like Frankenstein, Dracula, and Werewolf. Let's now listen to this recording. I'm holding it in my hand. It's a real record, so there'll be some sound problems. So forgive me in advance as we listen to first The Flash on side 1 and then Aquaman on side 2.
Central City Police, Malloy here. A dog did what? Look, lady, we're very busy. Why don't... Sure, but... Okay. Central City Police, Malloy here. Yes, Captain. The Central City Bank? Right away.
What's up, Malloy?
Another bank heist. Same M.O. as in the others. 3 weird characters moving so fast nobody could give a description.
This is getting big.
Yeah, maybe too big. Captain wants the Flash in on it immediately.
At that moment, Barry Allen was passing the Central City Bank in his labmobile. His super-fast vision had caught a glimpse of 3 strange figures making a fast getaway.
Wow! Those guys are as fast as I am. Gotta look into this.
Stopping the car, the young police scientist steps into a doorway, presses a secret button on the ring on his finger, and out leaps a red uniform. Within seconds, the familiar figure of the Flash super speeds after the 3 robbers.
Hey, they've disappeared. I've lost them.
Too much for even the mighty Flash, right, little man?
That voice. Where is it coming from? And how does he know where I am?
In case you're wondering who I am, tune in on any television or radio station tonight. I'm preempting all communications at 7 o'clock. You've got to think big, little man, if you want to keep up with me.
At precisely 7 o'clock, Flash and Captain Clark turn on every TV and radio in police headquarters.
People of America, this is Mr. Big.
Mr. Big. So that's his name.
And he is on every station.
Listen, and listen well. Tonight, I am taking control of this country. Tomorrow, the whole planet.
Phew, he sure talks big.
Should you doubt my ability to do so, look up at the crescent moon. Now, watch!
Good Lord. The tip of the crescent. It's been chipped off.
Probably by a super laser beam. Must have made a crater 500 miles wide to be visible to the naked eye at this distance.
Now that you have seen evidence of my power, I give you exactly 1 hour to acknowledge me as your leader. Fail at your peril, I will, I must, I shall bring order to this disordered planet. Hail to the new order!
Where have I heard that before?
I don't think he's bluffing, and I doubt if even you, the Flash, can stop him.
Maybe not, but I'm sure gonna give it one heck of a try.
Meanwhile, deep underground somewhere outside the city, Mr. Big waits in his secret headquarters like a spider waits for a fly.
At any moment now, our flighty friend, the Flash, following the obvious trail I left for him, like those childish bank jobs, will come crashing in thinking to surprise us. With him out of the way, nothing can stop me. Ah, there he is, you see? Welcome, my friend.
Huh? I can't see you. Where are you?
You will see me in due time, but first, meet my creation, Kino, the Kinetic Man, the quintessence of kinetic energy.
It's one of the 3 weirdos I saw near the bank.
Now, Kino, get him.
Wow, he's fast. Got me in a whirlpool of motion, spinning like a top.
Very good, Kino. And now, my second creation, Magno, the Magnetic Man. Show him what you can do, Magno.
The second weirdo, sending out some kind of magnetic field force. Can't move.
Excellent! And now, my fine, foolish friend, have a look at the third and greatest of my creations, Electro, the Electric Man.
Phew, does he look mean?
It was Electro's power that tore that piece out of the moon. He will be your executioner.
Now that I've met all your flunkies, how about a look at you? You don't sound like the shy type.
These flunkies, as you call them, are but extensions of me. The 3 faces of Mr. Big, you might say. The most perfect robots ever made.
Robots? Then they must be activated by electronic circuits. If I vibrate hard enough, I can break those circuits and put Kino and Magno out of commission. Here goes.
Concentrating all his energy, Flash sets up a vibration force so great it shatters the circuitry of the 2 robots, and they collapse into heaps of wire.
That did it! I'm free!
You fool! You've destroyed them! Now you will be destroyed! Electro, kill!
Oh, no, you don't!
Moving at super speed, the Scarlet Speedster crashes into Electro, driving him back against a metal plate on the wall. There is a tremendous flash of electricity, an explosion, and Electro crumbles into a jumbled mass of electronic circuitry as the metal panel slides upward, revealing a secret control room full of electronic equipment. And Mr. Big, whimpering like a child.
You? Mr. Big?
I am, Mr. Big! I am!
A few hours later, back at police headquarters.
Hi, Captain. What's the latest?
Hi, Barry. You just missed the Flash. He filled me in on the last moments of Mr. Big.
Yeah, what a tragedy. That magnificent head, with the greatest thinking machine of all time inside, trapped in the feeble body of a small child.
Surviving only on an energy transfer from the robots.
When the sword was cut off, his powers dwindled down to total impotence and...
Hey, how do you know all that?
I bumped into the Flash.
I'm turning the record over now to side 2, or side B, as they say.
Hey, Jim, what time's the supply ship due in? Our food supply's getting pretty low and it'll be dark soon.
It's overdue already.
Overdue? Boy, there must be a better way of making a living than running a lighthouse on an island in the middle of nowhere. Whenever folks on shore need anything, they hop down the corner store and get it. But out here, you gotta sit around and wait and wait and wait.
Hold it, Pete. There's a message coming in on the radio.
Yeah, same old story, I suppose. Supply ship delayed until tomorrow.
Shh, quiet. Good Lord. The supply ship has disappeared.
Disappeared? On a day like this? Not a cloud in the sky. Not a whitecap.
The report said that the Coast Guard got an SOS a few hours ago. A sudden violent storm kicked up, and the ship was going up.
Going down, you mean?
No, it said going up. But the ship's radio cut off at that point. Maybe they meant it caught fire and she was going up in flames.
Flames? We would have seen flames. But that reminds me. Remember the Aurora Borealis last night and the night before?
And unusually bright for the northern lights this time of year.
And strange how they look like a curtain of light dropping from the clouds to the ocean in just a small area. Northern lights usually seem to fill a whole part of the sky. Wonder if they affect the weather.
Talk about the devil. Look out there. The lights again. And am I seeing things, or is that a wall of water going up from the ocean to the sky like an illuminated fountain in reverse?
You're not seeing things, Jim. That's just what it is.
Aquaman!
Hi, Jim. Pete.
And Mara. What are the King and Queen of Atlantis doing out here?
We've been studying those mysterious lights and their effect on the water for some time now.
And frankly, we're worried. What if that curtain of light is in reality a sort of magnetic siphon controlled by intelligent beings from outer space?
Intelligent beings from some water-starved planet who, like ourselves, need water to survive.
And who have worked out a method of draining the ocean to provide life-giving water for their own planet.
Congratulations, Aquaman. Excellent reasoning for a mere earthling, I must say.
And who are you and what are you doing here?
I am Hydro, the Dehydrator from the planet Exodum. I have come to warn you, Aquaman, to remove all living things from the oceans of Earth.
But without water, they would die.
That is your problem. I am just trying to be what you would call humanitarian. In any case, within 24 hours, all the oceans of your Earth will be siphoned off to my planet.
Within 24 hours? That's impossible.
Oh, is it now? Look carefully at that curtain of light. Do you see that spaceship at the top? When I return there, I shall pull a switch which will activate the full power of our electromagnetic gravity intensifier.
Magnetic gravity intensifier? That explains the wall of water rising out of the sea.
Precisely. But what you see is only a small demonstration of its power, similar to the one earlier in the day in which the supply ship for this lighthouse was unfortunately caught up.
You murderer.
We wish Earth people no harm, but the people of Exodum must have your ocean. You have been warned. Farewell.
He's gone.
What are we going to do, Aquaman? Without water, not only everything in the sea will die, but so will every living thing on land.
We've got to stop Hydro before he pulls that switch. Come on, Mira. We're going to swim out to that curtain of light. Here we are, and there's the spaceship, way up there.
Aquaman, we're being pulled up with the water.
Just what I figured. We'll ride the water right up to the spaceship. Ah, there it is. And there's the airlock. Hang on to me now, and we're in.
Aquaman, how did you...
Never mind that. Quick, Mira, jam that switch.
Got it.
Curse you both! But you will pay for this. The automatic controls on the spaceship have been activated, and we are already on our way back to the planet Exodome.
Aquaman, he's right. We're moving up. No, we've stopped. We're going down.
Right. Look out that window.
It's Topo, our pet octopus, and a whole army of giant squids. They're pulling the ship down with their huge arms.
How did they get up here?
I sent a telepathic command to Topo to get his friends, the giant squids, and ride the wall of water up to the spaceship.
The way we got up here.
And pull it down to the sea where we shall turn you, Hydro, over to the authorities on land.
This was Exodome's last hope. I have failed my people, and now they are truly doomed.
But life on Earth has been saved thanks to you, Aquaman.
And to you, my beautiful queen.
Professor Bubblegum with you in Bubblegum Books, and there's nothing like a good joke.
Hi, kids. It's me, your friend Herman, and this is little Sherman. Please say hi for once, Sherman. Come on. Will you say hi, Blockhead? Hi, Blockhead. Oh, you always think you're so smart, don't you, Sherman? Yeah? I'm smarter than you are. We'll see. How many sides does a box have? 2, inside and outside. Oh, stop that.
Those Chimpy's jokes are from the 1970 Saturday morning show Lancelot Link, Secret Chimp. That was an ABC show that where they filmed actual chimps dressed up, and I think there were other types of apes as well, and then they would dub in them saying various things, and Lancelot Link was a spy. Next up is a short story from a paperback Scholastic book. These Scholastic books were sold in the 60s and 70s and 80s. Students could buy them in the classroom. And Scholastic Books probably is best known for being the publishers of the Harry Potter books. So things really took off eventually for Scholastic Books. But these were paperbacks specifically made to sell to students. This book is called The Case of the Marble Monster and Other Stories. It's by I.G. Edmonds. They are stories about a wise old Chinese judge.
He's
and
Japanese,
a lot of fun. Let's
not
read
Chinese.
The first story here. Let's see, what's the year of this? 1961. The first story is called Uka and the Stolen Smell. Now, it so happened in the days of old Edo, as Tokyo was once called, that the storytellers told marvelous tales of the wit and wisdom of His Honorable Honor Uka Tadasuke. This famous judge never refused to hear a complaint, even if it seemed strange or unreasonable. People sometimes came to his court with the most unusual cases, but Uka always agreed to listen. And the strangest case of all was the famous case of the stolen smell. It all began when a poor student rented a room over a tempura shop, a shop where fried food could be bought. The student was a most likable young man, but the shopkeeper was a miser who suspected everyone of trying to get the better of him. One day he heard the student talking with one of his friends. "It is sad to be so poor that one can only afford to eat plain rice," his friend complained. "Oh," said the student, "I have found a very satisfactory answer to the problem. I eat my rice each day while the shopkeeper downstairs fries his fish. The smell comes up, and my humble rice seems to have much more flavor. It is really the smell, you know, that makes things taste so good." The shopkeeper was furious to think that someone was enjoying the smell of his fish for nothing. "Thief!" he shouted. "I demand that you pay me for the smells you have stolen." "A smell is a smell," the young man replied. "Anyone can smell what he wants to. I will pay you nothing." Scarlet with rage, the shopkeeper rushed to Uka's court and charged the student with theft. Of course, everyone laughed at him, for how could anyone steal a smell? Uka would surely send the man about his business, but to everyone's astonishment, the judge agreed to hear the case. "Every man is entitled to his hour in court," he explained. "If this man feels strongly enough about his smells to make a complaint, it is only right that I, as city magistrate, should hear the case." He frowned at the amused spectators. Gravely, Uka sat on the bench and heard the evidence. Then he delivered his verdict. "The student is obviously guilty," he said severely. "Taking another man's property is theft, and I cannot see that a smell is different from any other property." The shopkeeper was delighted, but the student was horrified. He was very poor, and he owed the shopkeeper for 3 months of smelling. He would surely be thrown into prison. "How much money have you?" Uka asked him. "Only 5 mon, Honorable Honor," the boy replied. "I need that to pay my rent, or I will be thrown out into the street." "Let me see the money," said the judge. The young man held out his hand. Uka nodded and told him to drop the coins from one hand to the other. The judge listened to the pleasant clink of the money and said to the shopkeeper, "You have now been paid. If you have any other complaints in the future, please bring them to the court. It is our wish that all injustices be punished and all virtues rewarded." "But, most honorable honor," the shopkeeper protested, "I did not get the money. The thief dropped it from one hand to the other. See, I have nothing." He held up his empty hands to show the judge. Uka stared at him gravely. "It is the court's judgment that the punishment should fit the crime. I have decided that the price of the smell of food shall be the sound of money. Justice has prevailed as usual in my court." In the 1930s and 1940s, Whitman Books published hardback books for young people that featured celebrities that they liked. There were books about Shirley Temple or some of the young juvenile heartthrob actors of the 30s and 40s, where they would have fictional adventures. And the Whitman book I'm going to read from today is called The Quiz Kids and the Crazy Question Mystery. Now, the Quiz Kids were real-life, very smart young people who had a very popular radio show where they would compete to see who could answer the most questions. Show must have run 10 to 15 years, and here are some adventures featuring the Quiz Kids. Copyright 1946 by the Whitman Publishing Company, except for the authorized use of the name of Joe Kelly. Joe Kelly was the host of the radio show, a very nice man in Chicago, where the show was made. Other than Joe Kelly, all names, events, places, and characters in this book are entirely fictitious. Chapter 1 is called The Ghost Voice, and there's a great illustration here of the Quiz Kids named Francis, Billy, Jean, and Alice, and it's a drawing of them sitting up on a stage of the radio show, and for the radio show they would dress up for the live studio audience. They would wear cap and gown as if they were smart students, and they would sit at school desks. You get the idea, and the age range for the real-life Quiz Kids would range from as young as 4 and 5 to 15 and 16, and looks like these characters range in age from 5 to 15. Quiz Kids and the Crazy Question Mystery, Chapter 1, The Ghost Voice. The Quiz Kids never forgot the night their program was host to the Ghost Voice. When it was all over and they spent many hours talking about the strangest adventure that any of them ever would be likely to experience, they laughed a little self-consciously when they referred to it as the Ghost Voice. But no one laughed at it for a long time, and it was ghostly enough, a voice coming from nowhere with its crazy question. That was what the newspapers called it, the Crazy Question, but it was no more strange or unbelievable than the events that followed. Gene Markham and Frank Bennett were on the program that night, and Alice Lanier, all three regular members of the Classroom of the Air. They were the older Quiz Kids. Gene would soon reach the age limit, and the other two did not have far to go. The other Quiz Kids that night, little Billy Reed and Francis Lipton, the mathematics wizard, were younger. Alice, Jean, and Frank were sitting at their desks with their microphones before them. The program had not yet begun. Jean, on Alice's right, suddenly jumped to a sharp poke in the ribs. "Don't," he pleaded. "I'm ticklish." "Something queer is going to happen tonight," Alice said. "I have the strangest feeling." Jean gave her a skeptical look. "Feminine intuition, no doubt. I don't trust it. What's the nature of this strange feeling?" "Oh, I don't know. Just a sort of funny feeling." "My dear madam," Jean told her, "do you realize that as a genuine bona fide Quiz Kid, you receive each week the munificent salary of 3 lollipops and a piece of bubblegum for giving answers, a limited number in your case, to be sure, to questions which require factual replies. If you start looking in a crystal ball for the answers, I fear that you will lose your standing as a Quiz Kid. If you were taken from our midst, my heart would break." "All right," Alice pouted. "I'm sorry I mentioned it. My, how I hate boys, especially boys who are Quiz Kids." Jean turned to Frank. "Madame la Alice is now gazing into the future. At only 4 bits a gaze, sees all, knows all, tells all." Frank looked startled. "She's doing what?" "She rips the veil from the future," Jean explained. "Says she had a strange feeling that—" "Shh, we're going on the air," Frank warned. A technician in the control room stood facing them, one hand above his head and his eyes on a stopwatch. Suddenly, his hand swept downward, and he pointed to the announcer, who stood beside Joe Kelly, quizmaster of the program. A red light blinked on. The announcer turned his eyes to the script he held and spoke into the microphone. The program started just as smoothly as it had hundreds of times before. Before it was over, though, Jean would gladly have eaten his unkind words about Alice's feminine intuition, and in another 2 days, if the thought had crossed his mind, he would have done penance by eating them, even if they had been painted on a board fence. The show was going particularly well that night. There had been some opportunities for several quips that brought laughs from the studio audience. Subjects with which Gene was especially familiar had come up often, and he was the star of the program and realized it. A grin spread over his impish face beneath the mop of curly blonde hair. Even Frank's usually serious, darker face had relaxed into a half-smile that showed he was enjoying himself. Alice, leaning forward with both hands flat beside her on the chair, had just supplied, in answer to one of the questions, a quotation from Poe's poem, The Raven. and the silky, sad, uncertain rustling of each purple curtain thrilled me, filled me with fantastic terrors never felt before, so that now, to still the beating of my heart, I stood repeating, "'Tis some visitor entreating entrance at my chamber door, some late visitor entreating entrance at my chamber door. This it is, and nothing more." A pause followed the dramatic words, and the silence was broken by the ghost voice. Every listener turned to the program, heard it, a thin, tinny sound that hardly seemed human. "Hello, hello, hello." It seemed to come from far off, as if from another world. It was evident to everyone listening to the program that it was an interruption, for it sounded peculiarly out of place. "Hello, when is too late, if forever is late?" That was all, just that one crazy question. Then the ghost voice was gone to wherever it had come from, and the reassuring voice of the quizmaster was caught in the middle of a sentence. "See what you can do with this next question." For those in the studio were not among the accounted thousands who heard the ghost voice. The unaccounted thousands who had heard the voice, they could not, of course, listen to their own program. Even the technical staff in the control room, separated from the studio by thick plate glass, had not heard it. It was just as well, perhaps, that those who were producing the program did not hear the ghost voice. It was such an eerie sound that it was unnerving, even to those whose only interest in the program was listening to it. Listeners began to flood the station with telephone calls wanting to know what it meant. That was when those in the studio first became aware that something had gone wrong. The studio doors burst open, and a crowd pressed into the room, everyone talking excitedly. Lyndon, the production manager, mounted a chair and waved his hands for silence. Hold it! Hold it!" he shouted over the babble of voices. "Don't everyone talk at once, please. Let's find out what's going on around here." "You might begin by telling us what it's all about," the quizmaster suggested. Lyndon turned toward him with a harassed look. "We don't know ourselves, Joe. All of a sudden, our switchboard was jammed with calls from listeners wanting an explanation of some voice that broke in on the program. That's about all we know. The boys in the control room didn't hear a thing, they say." "A voice?" Kelly asked, puzzled. "What kind of voice? What did it say?" Lyndon shook his head. "Everybody has his own version of what the voice said. I called around to some of our outlets, and one of the stations is rushing us a recording of the program. All I can gather is that this voice broke in with some kind of crazy question." Lyndon turned to the crowd that had filled the studio. "Does anyone here know what this is all about?" He received no offers of information, and after a pause continued, "If this is a practical joke, it isn't funny at all, and the joker isn't going to think so when we catch up with him. Jim! Where's Jim?" Heads craned as Redmond, the chief engineer, emerged from the control room with all the cares of the world written on his face and his forehead dripping with sweat. "Have you found out anything?" Lyndon asked. The engineer shook his head. "No, but it looks as if something's wrong out at the transmitter. We can't get our man out there on the phone. I sent 2 of the boys out there to check up. The rest of them are checking over the whole system here in the building." Soon, Redmond, the engineer, hurried across the studio with information for Lyndon, Quizmaster Kelly, and others who were standing near enough that the 3 quiz kids overheard the conversation. "This beats anything I ever heard of," he began. "I just got a call from the men I sent out to the transmitter. Didn't get all the details, but briefly, it's this. Somebody stuck up our man out there with a gun and switched over to the announce mic. If you've ever been out to our transmitter, you know it's a pretty lonely place. It's put out there away from buildings or anything that might block the signal. We keep one man on duty out there all the time." Goodness, 24/7. What a job that is. "He doesn't have much to do except keep an eye on the equipment. And if the line from here to the transmitter breaks down so that the studio is off the air, he has an announce mic and a record player so he can fill in until we get the line repaired. As I said, I don't know all the details yet, but somebody walked in on him with a gun, switched off the program line, and cut in the announce mic and put that crazy question on the air." "Boy, if this isn't an 18-karat mystery, I never heard one," Gene exclaimed. "We've located the source of our ghost voice," Lyndon continued. "We've located the source of our ghost voice," Lyndon speaking. "It was some monkey business out at the transmitter. We've got that much of the mystery cleared up, so anyone who wants to leave can feel free to do so. I guess I'll have to leave, said Alice. Me too, Frank said. I don't suppose we'll learn anything more about the mystery tonight anyway. Come on, Jean. We can see Alice home. They took an elevator to the street level and strolled toward a bus stop. A block or two from the studio, Alice pointed down a side street. I want to check and see how old Frank and Jean and Alice are, according to this illustration here. Let's see, Frank is 8. Jean is 15 and Alice is 12. I don't think Frank really is old enough to be wandering the streets of Chicago. So they see a crowd down the street, and they say, look at the crowd, I wonder what happened. Probably an accident, said Jean. I see some police cars, but no ambulance, Frank replied. Doesn't look like an accident, let's see, said that 5-year-old. A burly, blue-coated policeman guarded the entrance to an office building, while a crowd of 2 or 3 dozen persons milled around and gazed toward a lighted third-story window. What's all the excitement? Jean asked of the gazers. All over now, bub. Some gang just pulled off a big job of some kind up there. Had a regular army, I hear, with machine guns and sawed-off shotguns. What kind of job was it? Alice asked. Their informant shrugged. Somebody says they got $500,000 in gold. Somebody else says jewels. The 3 quiz kids lingered a while in the hope of learning what had happened, but the crowd soon began to dwindle and they resumed their way. A likely story anyway, Jean said. What would anyone be doing with $500,000 in gold, or jewels either, in a building like that? It's illegal to have gold, isn't it? Alice asked. Doesn't the government have it all? That's right, Frank said. Remember, this is 1940-something. Any kind of story can get started in a crowd like that. What probably happened was the watchman saw a prowler, said, again, Frank, the 5-year-old.
You said he was 8.
It sure doesn't take much to collect a crowd in Chicago, Jean mused. And that's the end of Chapter 1 of the very intriguing Quiz Kids and the Crazy Question Mystery.
Listen to it fizz. Alka-Seltzer for headache. Alka-Seltzer for acid indigestion. Alka-Seltzer for cold distress. Alka-Seltzer presents the Quiz Kids.
And Quiz Kids, let me have your attention for today's first question. If someone gave you a gray hackle and a ginger quill, what would you do with them?
Well, your old Uncle Murph would like to give you folks listening in a hint on that one, but teachers watching me and the youngsters here in school are all ears. So see what you can do with it anyway, folks, and listen to the answers the Quiz Kids give. The chief quizzer himself, Joe Kelly.
Thank you, Bob Murphy, and hello, everyone. Well, we have a very important guest for you to meet this afternoon, friends. Miss Phyllis Haig, the winner of the Quiz Kids Best Teacher Contest for 1949. Now, Miss Haig has spent the past week here in Chicago, and she tells me she has been every place and seen just about everything. I asked her to name some of the high spots, and, well, you should have heard her. There have been flowers, special luncheons and dinners with celebrities, a wonderful evening at the theater enjoying Finian's Rainbow, a complete beauty treatment at the Elizabeth Arden Salon, a delightful interview with Dr. Harold C. Hunt, Chicago Superintendent of Schools, a polo game, and now, this afternoon, to climax this week of weeks, Mr. Charles S. Beardsley, chairman of the board of Miles Laboratories, will present Miss Haig with the first prize in our Best Teacher Contest, the $2,500 Scholarship Award. But first, we'll get schoolwork out of the way, Quiz Kids. Here we go with roll call. Patrick?
I am Patrick Owen Conlon. I'm 11 years old and at 7A at the Fort Dearborn School in Chicago.
Joel?
I'm Joel Kupperman. I'm 12 years old and a freshman at Roosevelt High School.
David?
I'm David Freifelder. I'm 13 years old and a freshman at Waukegan Township High School, Waukegan, Illinois.
Richard?
I'm Richard Weixler. I am 9 years old and in the 4th grade at the University of Chicago Laboratory School.
And as a special guest on our board, we have the winner of a Quiz Kids contest conducted by the Easter Seal Campaign at the famous R.J. Delano School for Crippled Children in Kansas City, Missouri. Another David. You know, we're very proud of David Drummond. Of course, he always has had a brilliant mind, but due to cerebral palsy, he couldn't talk at all when he first entered Delano School. And he's making such marvelous progress, and we're all very, very happy about it. And now back to your first question from Mary E. Reyna of Pine Ridge, California. If someone gave you a gray hackle and a ginger quill, what would you do with them? Now, we have 3 hands up, and David Drummond's hand was first. All right, David.
Well, I'd go fly fishing with them.
That's right, you would, because that's what they are. They are both fishing flies. Well, fine. Now then, on this next question here, Eileen Anderson of Vancouver, Washington, is going to take us into a lost and found department for this next question, kids. And if you quiz kids miss the question, Alka-Seltzer will send Ellen Anderson one of those magnificent Zenith radio phonograph combinations. The set with 2 Cobra tone arms, one for regular playing records and one for the new long playing records, and 2 FM bands. Now we'll see who wins. If you ran a lost and found department for things lost in the stories of operas, you would have quite a collection. Try and get 2 out of 3 on this one. In what opera did someone lose a key? In what opera, Pat?
That was in La Boheme.
And
Mimi lost her
Mimi
key.
in La
There's some of the
Boheme,
real
that's right.
Quiz Kids
Fine,
radio show
fine.
from the 1940s, and
Rudolph
we'll continue reading
Now then,
Quiz
tell me,
Kids
in what opera
book,
did
the
someone lose a pin?
grab it here, get the title right, the Quiz Kids and the Crazy Question Mystery on our next show, I think. For our last reading this hour, I'm going to read from Mad Magazine, a very early issue of Mad Magazine, Mad Magazine number 2. Mad Magazine is a humor magazine that's been published for decades and decades. And recently, even I heard has stopped publishing new issues. The first 20 or 30 issues of Mad Magazine were actually in comic book form. And this is from the second issue of Mad Magazine. And this is, the artist is credited, but not the author. Let's see here in the front of, see what information I have about this story. This story is called Melvin. It's kind of a comic book parody of Tarzan. The art's by John Severin. I suppose it's possible that John Severin wrote it, but, my notes here say that Harvey Kurtzman, the original editor of Mad Magazine, wrote Melvin. Let's read about Melvin here, this parody of Tarzan. From the Jungle Department, Africa, wild, untamed land where time stands tangled in the jungle. Africa, home of the fierce Gamogli pygmies, the terrible Gambwali cannibals, and the horrible Okabalakanga headhunters. Also home of the jungle ape man, an ape man named Melvin. And we see Melvin with a few chimpanzees sitting around. They're all grooming each other, going ook, 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 ook. And Melvin looks like the traditional Tarzan, muscular guy in a loincloth with long, dark hair. The chimpanzees, by the way, are reading copies of Crypt of Terror, which was another comic book published by the people that published Mad Magazine. Melvin speaks, "Ho-hum, me, Melvin of Apes, tired of this nonsense. I tink I go home to Jane. I tink I give war crime of King of Apes. Ooh-ha!" Then he jumps on a vine and swings. Swoosh! "Hey, me forget. Where's Boy? Jane tell me keep eye on Boy. Where Boy? Hey, look at that muscle." He's admiring his muscles. And then Boy comes running. Hoo-ha! Boy's a big giant brute of a little lad. "Hey, Melvin of Apes, hear me come. Here come Boy. Hoo-ha! Oops!" And he falls. Thud. Big Mad Magazine thud. Thud. "Oops, me get sudden crampin' leg. But here me come, Melv. Hoo-ha! Clear him deck, Melv. Me gonna swing out on vine and..." Oh, and the boy tries to swing like Tarzan did, and we hear a great distant scream as he falls to the ground. Eee! Boy, miss. Boy, how many times me tell you to use hands when swing from vine? Show off. For that you walk home. Ho! At last, after much swinging swiftly over Errol Skyway in treetops, me come in sight of Jungle House, where Jane waits. We see a great tree house in the distance. "Hello, Jane. What cookin'?" Oh, Melvin, Jane afraid. I hear Tantor the elephant talking with Gombo the lion. Tantor say Ukabalanga going on warpath. We hear the sound of drums in the distance. Boom, bapa-doom, bapa-boom, boom, 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 bapa-doom. His war drum of Ukabalanka, dis serious. Jane pulls out a old-fashioned 1930s gangster submachine gun. We don't have to take none of that baloney, Melv. Let's go out and blast 'em, she says. Ugh, Jane, you got fire stick of many thunders. Melvin no like fire stick. Bad man invention. Melvin break. Breaks the submachine gun over Jane's head, and we still hear that drumming. Boom, bapa, boom, bapa, boom. Come, Jane. Me go pick up spore of Unka Balunka Conga. Me tell him to cut that noise out. Ho, Jane. Me pick up spore of trail. Man scent growing stronger, is very strong now. And Tarzan's sniffing along the ground like a bloodhound, and we see they're surrounded by natives. It's the Unka Balanka. Stand back, Jane. Me gonna fight. Me give war cry of the big bull ape Kongwa. Hoo-ha! Ha! Unka Balanga, put 'em up. Me hear how you shrink heads. He starts punching at him. There's like 100 people all pointed spears at him. Ha! Me know how you got strange, mysterious formula to shrink 'em. Hey, but you know shrink 'em my head. Come on. And he punches all of the natives there. Ha! Me knock out all Unka Balunka except this one punk. Me knock him out. Then I give my victory cry of Nganda, the big bull ape. Ow! And the remaining native, who's just a little kid, who's wearing diapers that say Hopalong Cassidy Fan Club, shoots at him with a dart gun. And Melvin, the Unka Balunkas are taking us away to shrink our heads. Jane, where'd that caliber fire stick? You sure I bust it? And then the chief of the natives speaks. Melvin, we're going to fix your wagon. We're going to tie you to 4 elephants and tear you in 4 equal parts. Any last requests, old man? Yes, just let Melvin give one little old cry of bull ape and Gonka in trouble. Hoo-ha! Hoo-ha! And the hoo-ha echoes through the whole forest. And beautiful illustrations of all the wild animals hearing hoo-ha, hoo-ha, and they come running toward the natives who all say, we surrender, comrade, white flag. Melvin, us Unka Balunkas give up. You big boss round here from now on, forgive us. We give you gifts and all kinds of bribes. First, we have big feast. Fried warthog warts and a little leftover haunch of explorer we had in icebox. Then we give you gifts. Voodoo doll you can stick pins in, keep your mate in line. Ouch, says Jane, thinking about it. Then we give you a couple extra wives. This one here, she kiss you, oh boy, you stay kissed. And now for main gift of evening. Very fine gift made by secret old Unka Balunka formula. Make good television set decoration. Bring special gift. His shrunken head. It's boy. And we see boy, who's still kind of a big caveman-looking kid. But his head now is very, very small. Ugh, go away, boy. You repulsive. Oh, come on, Melv. Me good. Me swing on vine with 2 hands now. Take boy back to treehouse, will ya, huh? Will ya, huh? Will ya, huh? It's all the time we have for Bubblegum Books. I'm your host, Professor Bubblegum. Thanks for stopping by the archives. I'll talk to you later.
Books! Books! All the books I'll need. All the books. All the books I'll ever want. All the books I want. All the books. Ah.